Assalamu alaikum and very good morning to everyone present at this meeting today. I hope all of you are safe and taking necessary precautions as we together fight this COVID-19 pandemic. We all know that all our lives have been affected, and there is a sudden change from working in office to working from home, which is completely new to most of us. But I have always believed that whenever there is a drastic change, it's always the learners who come out and take over the future because it's all about survival of the fittest. And I think people who continuously develop new skills and keep upgrading their skills to align with the current trends of research and the ways of doing research, they are the people who will be more successful in the future. And keeping that in mind, we have arranged this particular presentation where we talk about improving research planning skills using tools like Scopus and Science Direct from Elsevier. So let us start with the presentation now. So I start with one slide of Elsevier where I just want to inform you that Elsevier is a global information analytics company specializing in science and health. At Elsevier, we've partnered with the scholarly community for over 140 years to curate and verify knowledge. And now, as an information analytics company, we are committed to bring that rigor to a new generation of Elsevier platforms like Science Direct, Scopus, Mendeley, and many more. As a leading publisher of science and health information, we at Elsevier serve 30 million scientists, students, and health and information professionals worldwide. We help advance science and health by providing world class information and innovative tools that help researchers make critical decisions, enhance productivity, and improve research outcomes. Combining content with technology supported by operational efficiency, we turn information into actionable knowledge. The tools that we develop are specifically designed to target the research workflow and help researchers at every stage of their research journey, be it current awareness, applying for grants, sharing and collecting knowledge, or managing your own career network. Elsevier has tools to support you at every stage of the research journey because we believe that researcher centricity should be the key concept behind development of any of our tools. And at Elsevier, we strongly believe that supporting researchers starts by understanding their actual needs. What do the researchers of today actually need? We all know the requirements of every researcher changes at every stage, right? There are different requirements of a young, so if we talk about a young student and we talk about a top professor, they both have needs, but their needs are very different, right? So and the way of approaching these needs and the way of getting information, way of doing things is totally different, right? So these tools have been designed to support anyone, be it a research scholar, be it a senior professor, a librarian, a vice chancellor, or anyone in the ORIC office, anyone. So these tools are developed to support each and everyone in the institute. So some of you might think that Scopus is a product which is only used for citations and bibliography, which is completely wrong. That is just 10% of what tools like Scopus can do, right? So that is what we are going to explore today, how these tools can actually help you in further strengthening your research planning. So we all agree that research demands and needs have changed over the last years, and so has the methods of accessing information and knowledge. Researchers today are more demanding than ever before. Let us understand why. So, what is the main purpose of research? The main purpose of research is to inform action, to prove a theory, and contribute to the developing knowledge in a field or study. Whereas a word quite synonymous with research is innovation. And innovation is about taking inventions to the marketplace by translating scientific knowledge into products, services, and offerings for economic, social, political, etc. growth, right? And every researcher like you today is striving hard to find opportunities to grow, to innovate, and contribute to his own career, his institute's performance, as well as his nation's or country's benefit. And these efforts are bringing a serious change in what you need today. Today's researchers like you are more demanding than ever before because you look for citing impactful work, you look for evaluating your own impact, be more organized, find relevant collaborators, manage research data, and therefore, to achieve all these objectives, you look for tools that can help you make this job easier. However, the most important resource for you still remains to be quality research articles published in quality research journals, right? And finding the most relevant and valuable content still remains to be the most important challenge for every researcher. Finding the right content to cite, finding the right journal to publish in. These are the two important things that every researcher faces in his entire career. So let us understand how this information comes and from how this information is filtered. If you look around you, there is a lot of data, right? Just go and sit outside the window and just look out. You will find so much data. You will see birds flying here and there. You will find people talking to each other. You will overhear someone. So all this is what? All this is data. There is a lot of data. You open news channels, you open anything. What do you do with all this data? How do you process all this data, right? So when you start applying logic to this data, it gets converted into information. So now these tools like Google and other search engines, what they do, they have a lot of data, they apply logic using your keywords, and they give you information, right? Now information is something that is good to have, but information is not something which researchers can actually cite, because unless the information is peer reviewed, it is of no use to researchers. So peer reviewed information is the most important source of knowledge for the researchers. Now, with regular application of this knowledge, you will start getting insights. And insights are, let's say, what are the different ways of reaching point B from point A? These are called insights, right? Now, what is the best way of reaching point B from point A? And not the shortest, the best. That comes with experience. And that is when you achieve wisdom. So with an ocean of data surrounding you, it takes logic, peer review, application of knowledge, and experience to achieve wisdom. However, for researchers, the quest for knowledge does not end with searching only journal content, because we all come from anywhere. It can come from a journal, it can come from a book, from a conference proceeding, from a patent. Knowledge can come from anywhere. Unless the information is peer reviewed, it is of no use. Once it is peer reviewed, you are it is a gold mine for you. In the recent years, with the advent of big data and data science, research has become more powerful and more data driven. And so have tools like Science Direct, Scopus, etc. Because we all know that today's researchers are faced with ever growing volumes of information that they need to search, evaluate, and incorporate into their work. If you look at the scientific industry, there are more than 6,000 publishers. Elsevier is only one. There are 6,000 publishers that are, what do you say, approved uh, publishers, which publish more than 40,000 peer-reviewed journals. More than 26 lakh articles are published every year, right? So not 26 lakh, 26 million articles, right? So what do you do in such a huge ocean of information? How do you make sure that your article stands out in this entire ocean? How do you find out the best article in this entire ocean? That is where you need to fixate or you need to choose a few databases which you can absolutely trust, and which you know that if you are on that website, you are going to get world class information that you can trust, that you can download, that you can cite. Science Direct is Elsevier's leading platform of peer reviewed literature that helps you move your research forward. With over 16 million articles on the Science Direct platform, Science Direct has world's 18% of the entire published data. That is huge. Now, this data not only includes more than 2,500 journals, but also includes more than 39,000 books, which makes it a very unique platform which hosts both journals and books on the same platform. So, can you recall any other platform, that hosts both journals and books on one single platform? There are very few, and Science Direct is very unique in that. These 18% publications fetch 25% of the world's citation, which tells you that researchers across the globe trust Elsevier content. They like to cite Elsevier articles. Why? Because Elsevier articles give them that quality. 65 journals out of 236 subject categories. Elsevier journals rank number one in 65 categories and number two and three in many other categories. And this is a report by Journal Impact Factor, right? So you can easily say that Science Direct offers you the widest range of trusted, high quality, interdisciplinary research content. When I say interdisciplinary, I mean content starting from physical sciences, life sciences, medical sciences, as well as social sciences. So a lot of people ask me, what do you do with social sciences? What kind of material we have? So under social sciences, we have all kinds of topic which include social work, law, hospitality, travel, literature. So any topic, sociology, psychology, any topic that you can think of. So I can tell you right here, if you have any topic in mind, it is already there on Science Direct. So Science Direct covers all subject areas that you can think of. So as I said, all the content on Science Direct is divided into 23 major categories, which are again further subdivided into subcategories. For example, let's talk about agriculture and biological sciences. So then agriculture and biological sciences may be divided into agronomy, irrigation, etc. The different fields of agriculture, as well as different fields of biological sciences, which may include microbiology, immunology, etc. So all these 23 categories are further subcategorized into subdomains, right? So researchers can easily find out, let's say for agronomy, which are the journals that publish content on agronomy on Science Direct. You can simply find that out if you go to the Science Direct platform, and I will demonstrate that to you as well. I already told you that 18% of the world's content is published on the Science Direct platform, which fetches 25% of the citations. But if you look at the reference share of Elsevier, it is 27% globally, which means across the world, when researchers write research articles, they like to refer Elsevier content. They like to cite Elsevier content. And that is why we have the highest across all publishers of 27%. I already told you that knowledge is seamless. Building knowledge is seamless. You can get knowledge from anywhere. And that is why we believe that today's researchers, since they have broad multidisciplinary workflows, they need access to not only journals, but different content types. And the boundaries between books, journals, conference proceedings, patents, all this is slowly fading because everybody now is interested in a authentic source of information and does not care about whether it's a journal or it's a book. In fact, both journals and book offer very different kinds of content. Journals are for specialized topics for in-depth knowledge, whereas books have more of foundational content, which sets the foundation of any research. And therefore, we believe that that basically to cover the content gaps, when you do some research, there will be some content gaps that need to be filled. and foundational knowledge should be provided wherever needed. And that is why I told you in the beginning, Science Direct is a unique platform because it has both journals and books on one single platform. And researchers can easily move between journal content and book content at a click of a button using a feature called topic pages. Now, to explain you topic pages in a very simple way, suppose you are reading a research article and you find a word that you are finding it difficult to understand or difficult to place. Now that word is hyperlinked. So if you click on that link, it will take you to a book page where the definition of that particular word is already provided. And all the related article to that word are given below. So you can easily read all those topics, including the definition and the related keywords. So one word can have similar words as well. So all those are listed on the side, which gives the users a very good experience of reading the topic in detail. So that is what I mean by filling up the content gaps through topic pages. Now, on the Science Direct platform, there are more than 330,000 topic pages which have been hyperlinked from 20 subject areas covering more than 4.8 million journal articles. These topic pages are one of the highest used features on the Science Direct platform, and they get an average of 13 million visits per month across the globe. So you can very well understand that the the acceptability of topic pages is across the world. And the reason is that book content enriches journal content. And without book content, users must leave the website to get the in-depth contextual answers that they need. With Science Direct having both journals and books on one platform, users can get a complete picture about that particular topic and making research more efficient and increasing the value and usage across the library. And this is only possible by a unique feature called topic pages, which is already available to every Science Direct user who accesses the website. Now, if you look at over 3 years, the cumulative growth of visits of topic pages has increased by 295%. So we launched topic pages in 2017, and in 3 years, the traffic has increased by 300%, which is a clear testament to the acceptability of topic pages. And I'm sure some of you who are using the Science Direct platform regularly would have seen this particular feature where you get a hyperlinked word and you just click on it and it takes you to a book page. So I think that will also improve the co-usage and will improve the possibilities of doing finer research. And again, talking about knowledge, and I already said that knowledge can come from anywhere. So there I'm talking about the source of knowledge. Here I'm talking about the time period of knowledge. So knowledge, when I say content, I don't mean current content. I also mean content that is historical or archival content, because that is equally important. On an average, every research article has 10 to 15% articles that are published beyond 1995. And the reason is quite simple. Whenever you do a literature review, Whenever you do a literature review in your introduction section, you need to cite articles from different time periods. You need to show a timeline. What happened in the beginning? How did you come to your own research? What is the relevance of your research? That is only defined in the literature review section. So there you need to cite not only the latest content, but also content that is published beyond 1995, and that is called backfiles, archival content, classical content, etc. Right? Okay. So main thing that I want to share today regarding the Science Direct platform is how Science Direct can benefit all the members of an institute. So let me start by looking at how Science Direct helps an institute. So first thing is, what is important for an institute? Number one, receiving high rankings in the QS and THE and other world rankings, right? Even rankings across Pakistan. Next, increasing number of student enrollments and admissions. right? And then pursuing continuous improvement and excellence leading to increased research grants. So, how does Science Direct help? So, Science Direct is committed to fulfilling these requirements by an institute by providing top quality journals and books for increased impetus on R&D. Increased research has multiple benefits to an institute because when research goes up, research grants go up and the ranks go up, which further increases the number of student enrollments and increases the excellence among students, not only the current but also the incoming students as well. So, this is how Science Direct is extremely important for the development of an institute. Moving on to a faculty. What does a faculty need? So, as part of our Voice for Customer initiative, we spoke to faculty members to understand their needs in detail. And what we came across was for them, academic excellence is important. They wanted to conduct research to enhance their own career prospects. And because technology and science is evolving rapidly, staying on top of current research trends was most important to them. And the reason was they could guide their students better. So ultimately, the aim of a faculty is to ensure that their students are doing well. They pass on the relevant knowledge. And that can only happen if the faculty themselves are well equipped. So let's see how Science Direct helps faculty. So if academic excellence is the goal, then Science Direct provides the best research content, which is the highly cited content, and which is a great plus point for the faculty because they publish more, they can publish more, and they can research highly cited content, which keeps them on top of their field, gives them the latest trends, and improves their uh, overall research knowledge. And above everything else, Science Direct offers the most up to date multidisciplinary content. We all know that today's research is not limited to one subject area, right? It is multidisciplinary. We very quickly move from one subject to a different subject, right? Maths and biology. So if you talk about statistics, biostatistics, what is biostatistics? It's a combination of biological data, working with biological data, but it involves a lot of statistics. So these are two separate fields merging into one, and it is termed as biostatistics. So now there are a lot of cross functional subject areas that are working. So if you are working on a wider range of subject areas, Science Direct is the platform to you. Let's say if some scientist is researching on coronavirus today and another scientist is working on the ergonomic analysis of a washing machine, right, which is maybe considered a very simple topic, both these researchers can come to the Science Direct platform and get both the pieces of information and the up to date and the latest piece of information. So Science Direct is for everyone, for every subject area, for every faculty. How is it important for a student? So students are looking for improving their problem solving skills, right? Students have a lot of issues, a lot of problems. What they need is to improve their problem solving skills. You can't just go every time to a senior with your problem. When you go with a problem, you should go with possible solutions. So you should tell the anyone you are approaching, this is the problem. I have thought of these three solutions. Do you think one of them is good, or do you want me to explore some more? This is a good way of communicating your problem, not just going with a problem and saying, I have a problem, please help me, right? So they need to understand, students need to understand that the competition is very high. So they need to continuously keep raising the bar and develop the competitive edge. In addition, students also look forward to getting jobs in corporates during your placements, right? So Science Direct contributes to their overall problem solving skill development, which is a very valuable skill when it comes to corporates. You can approach your senior with an issue that, okay, I have a problem, please help me. You can't do that in a corporate. If you are working in a corporate, you are the one who are going to solve the problem. You are the one who is going to give answers, right? So if a student reads really high cited content from international authors, it puts him or her on the global map, since Science Direct offers up to date research from the global research scenario, Let's say an engineer in Germany is researching about nanochips, and another engineer in Russia is searching about Internet of Things. Both the info piece of information can be easily accessed by the research student in India because he already has access to both the content, thanks to internet and thanks to Science Direct. And all this research content passes through so many stringent quality checks and peer reviews that the students can be confident that they get the most authentic, highly cited, multidisciplinary research content. In fact, corporates use Science Direct as well. So we have an entire team that works with corporate Science Direct. And if the students already have a hands-on use with the Science Direct platform, they have that competitive edge. So the competitive edge that we were talking about, that comes to use when students are already using platforms which other corporates are already using. So we see that Science Direct delivers quality value promise to all the stakeholders, the institute, faculty, and the students altogether. So let us now see how University of Agriculture Faisalabad has been benefiting from the Science Direct platform. So what I have done, I have taken the research snapshot of University of Faisalabad for the last 5 years, 2015 to 2020 YTD, which means year till date. We still haven't finished 2020. So what I see, the number of publications has been close to 6,326, which have received over 50,000 citations. Citation per publication is 8, which is outstanding. The thing that I want to highlight is the field weighted citation impact, which is 1.21. Now, what is field weighted citation impact? This tells you the quality. 1 is considered to be global world average. Anything above 1 is better than world average. Anything below 1 is below world average. Right now, the quality of research articles published by University of Agriculture Faisalabad is above 1, 20% above world average, which is 1.21. So this tells you that the quality of research is good currently, right, in the last 5 years. But let us look at the right hand side of the column. What do we look here? We see that over last 5 years, your publications have grown at a growth rate of 15.36%, whereas the quality is only growing at a rate of 7%. Now, this is something which University of Agriculture Faisalabad needs to look into. Although a good job is being done in terms of number of publications, I think if there is still a lot of scope of improvement when it comes to quality improvement, because last 5 years we see that the quality, the good thing is the quality has not gone down. The quality has remained stable, right? But there is a good opportunity to grow in quality as well. And that can only be done by understanding which subject areas are doing well and where we need to invest more to give them more quality content to help them achieve that quality perspective. If you look at content number, your maximum publications are in the field of agricultural, biological sciences, and biochemistry. But we also see other cross-disciplinary areas where you have been working on, which includes environmental science, chemistry, engineering, veterinary science, material science, chemical engineering, etc., right? Which also have a considerable percentage in your entire research. If we look at the top authors from your university in the last 5 years, so Mohammad Adnan Shahid has the most number of documents, which is 254, as recorded on Scopus and Scival. And Nabil Khan Niazi has the best field weighted citation impact of 4.35. So, which again tells you that these are all the quality, individual quality of the articles published by these authors. Most of them have quality beyond 1, which is extremely good to know. But again, a few where we need to, probably University of Agriculture Faisalabad needs to look into to help them get the desired content and give them the desired resources to further improve this number. What is Elsevier's contribution to University of Agriculture Faisalabad in terms of quantity? So we have already seen the global perspective that world over, we have a publication share of 18%. At University of Agriculture Faisalabad, we have a publication share of 15.5%, which is again the highest across all the publishers. right? Which means researchers at University of Agriculture, Faisalabad prefer to publish in Elsevier journals. Now, these, in order to write research articles, again, Elsevier is the most preferred publisher. 33% of your references come from Elsevier journals. So that again gives you the reliability of Elsevier content at your university. And when you talk about citations received, 33% of the citations have been received by the articles published in Elsevier. So, which tells you when it comes to overall institute performance in rankings, etc., Elsevier has been the highest contributor when it comes to citations on the articles published. Talking about quality, Elsevier is the only publisher that has the FWCI of 2.56. So your overall FWCI is 1.21. Elsevier documents have a quality of 2.56, which means any articles, all the articles that you have published with Elsevier have together given you a quality of 2.56, which is much more than your overall, more almost double than your overall institute's quality. And Elsevier also has, if you look at the right hand side graph, the top 10% journals, Elsevier has the highest share. So these numbers actually tell you that the maximum share in the top quality documents as well as the highest contributor to quality is Elsevier at your institute. Okay, so this was everything that I needed to talk about the Science Direct platform. Now let's come to something more focused on researchers, which is the publishing workflow. Now, we all know that the biggest challenge for researchers first is to identify which journals to publish in, to read. Next is to which journals to send your article to for publication, right? Now, this particular publishing workflow will help you understand why your articles are being rejected. So a lot of you have this question: what am I doing wrong? Why is my article being rejected? What does the editor want? So the reason of sharing this information with you today is to help you understand how you can plan your research and work harder on the critical areas that can ultimately lead to higher percentage and acceptability of your research articles in top journals. So let us say you submit a research article to a journal. Where does the article go? So first, the article comes to the editor's desk. Now, the editor is a busy person. Every day, journal receives 20 to 100 articles on his desk. And the next day, he will receive the same number of documents. So he has to ensure that he has to transfer these documents quickly to the reviewers if he finds them worth reading. So the editor has a few set of criterias in his mind that he has set, that okay, if the journal qualifies all these points, the article, I will forward it to the reviewer, otherwise I will reject it. So if you could know in the beginning that what I need to take care of, which are the areas I should focus on, then you can plan your research right at the beginning before you even start writing your paper. So let us see what the editors actually want. So in the first literature review, the first editor desk review that the editor does, he looks for the following things. He looks for whether the article is scientifically correct or not, which means your research is not an isolated piece of work. It has been built on previous proved data as well. So the topic has to be, the content has to be scientifically correct. Then it should report something new, right? So it should be a new idea, a new product, a new concept. It can't be something that has already been done. Next, it should report something significant, which means the readers should be interested, right? So that's the next point. The article should be of interest to the readers. So what is important in a journal? Important in a journal is the readers, the people who are going to read that journal. So when you publish a research article, you as an author, when you publish a research article, what is your end in mind? So there can be different end in minds. One is that I want to publish in a high impact factor journal. Okay, acceptable. Somebody says I want to get lot of citations, right? Now these two things have no correlation to each other, no direct correlation. Publishing in a high impact factor journal does not guarantee you citations. Neither publishing in a low impact factor does. But the main thing is not to find a journal with a high impact factor. The main thing is to find a journal that accepts your content, that has the readers that will read your content and will cite you. Because these citations will have a correlation to the reader that will show the impact of your research. Don't you think there are articles published in very high impact factor journals that have zero citations? It is quite possible. So focus on publishing in a journal that respects your content, that has the readers who will read your content and will cite you if they find your content interesting. Now, what are the reasons that the editor has to reject a research article? So the first is topic of research not trending, not impactful. So it it is very similar to my last point, which was it should be of interest to the readers, which means if the topic is not trending or if it's not impactful, then the editor probably is not interested. Why? So what is the job of an editor? The job of an editor is to ensure that the quality of a journal increases year on year. How can a quality of a journal increase year on year? Only by citations, right? So the more the number of citations are, the quality of a journal increases. So when does an article get citations? When it is read a lot of times, when more and more people read that article because the topic is of interest to them, right? So what is a trending topic? So if I ask you today, in the field of medical science, what is the most trending topic today? It is coronavirus or COVID-19, right? If I would have asked you the same question 1 year back, then your answer would be cancer, right? So see how quickly trends changed. So this is what you mean by trend, something that is being talked about currently. And then what do you mean by impactful? So something that creates a lot of impact, like coronavirus, right? So coronavirus has created an impact in every field: financial, travel, economics, lifestyle, everything. So it's an impactful topic, right? Now trends can change very quickly. Even by use of one single word, the trends can change completely. So if I ask you, is cancer a trending word? Yes, it is still a trending word. But if I ask you, is lung cancer a trending word? Then you will think twice. If you are not a subject expert, you will think twice. Cancer may be trending, lung cancer may not be trending. So what happened here? As soon as I added a keyword, that is lung, the entire trends changed. So you need to be very careful when you choose keywords. Then the next thing. So when you get a research article, suppose you find a research article, what is the first thing that you read? The first thing is the title. So you want to read the title and see whether it is of interest to you or not. If you find the title interesting, then next thing, what do you read? You read the abstract, because that gives you an idea of the entire document. So what the editors say, that the abstract should be written perfectly. There should be minimum language errors. Now the editors say that they understand that English may not be the first language of everyone across the globe. So if anyone is not confident, they should take help. They should take help from a senior or someone you can trust. There are certain online, platforms where you can get paid or free services as well. So make use of that, but ensure that if you are publishing in an English journal, the English is correct. The English does not need to be outstanding. It needs to be simple logical, easy to understand. Then too many or irrelevant self citations. So this is also something which is a debatable topic, which is self citation, citing your own articles, which is allowed. So a person is allowed to cite his or her own articles only if it is relevant to the current article. If you are just citing research articles to get a citation, that can land you into trouble because it comes under unethical practices. And if there is anything unethical about a article, the editor is not interested to go ahead. So he will simply reject that paper. Then poor geographical distribution of citations. So what do I mean by geographical distribution? It means that the articles that you cite should come from different parts of the world and not just Pakistan or any other country. So don't focus on one or two countries. Try to take a good mix of different countries across the globe, right? That will tell the editor that you have done good research. You have read articles from everywhere. It is all about वो कहते हैं ना कि दिखाना भी पड़ता है, right? So it is all about that. You need to show the editor that you have read articles from different parts of the world. Then recent articles not cited, something which is very critical. You need to cite the latest as well as the older articles as well. That will give again the editor an understanding that you are reading articles from different time periods and gives confidence to the editor that, okay, this person has done good research. And then leading scientists and top journal articles not cited. Again, something which the editor wants to see. He wants to see the top journal articles as well as the leading scientists being cited. Okay. Now, having said all this, you must be wondering, how do we get all this information? कहाँ पता चलेगा कि टॉपिक ट्रेंडिंग है कि नहीं? How do I get different citations from different parts of the world? How do I get the latest and the older articles? How do I know who is the top scientist? Which is the top journal article? So the answer lies in tools, research tools. One of that tools is called Scopus. So Elsevier has a bouquet of tools that can help researchers. Scopus is something which is the heart of content at Elsevier. So earlier I talked about Science Direct. Science Direct is what? Science Direct is a full text platform where you can download PDFs if you have access, and the content is only from one publisher, that is Elsevier. Scopus is the world's largest abstract and citation database of peer-reviewed literature from more than 5,000 publishers. So here you get content from more than 5,000 publishers worldwide, not just Elsevier, right? So this will actually tell you that because the content is from 5,000 publishers, there are 78 million records on the Scopus platform, and all the data is peer reviewed. You don't get full text, but you get the citation data, you get the abstract. So you can read the abstracts of different papers. You can do so many analysis, which I will demonstrate to you. Okay. So on Scopus, we not only have English language journals, but also more than 40 different languages that are covered. So again, language should not be a barrier to research, right? So what if you don't know a particular language? The abstract will always be in English. So one of the criterias of getting Scopus indexed, even if it's a Urdu journal, the abstract has to be in English. Rest of the paper can be in your local language, right? Then Scopus indexes articles daily, which means if an article is published today, it will be on Scopus tomorrow. So researchers accessing Scopus have first-hand information to the latest research, right? Which keeps you updated. Approximately 10,000 articles are added to Scopus every day, right? Then not only open access, not only the subscribed journals, but also open access journals are on the Scopus platform. And the oldest article on Scopus dates back to 1788. So we have articles from 1788, not only till 2020 but even beyond 2020. So there are a lot of articles that are still in press, articles in press that are due to be published next year or the year after. All this information is already available on the Scopus platform, and researchers can access them immediately. As I said earlier, knowledge can come from anywhere. It can come from journal, conferences, books, and patents. And Scopus covers all these on one single platform. So you have more than 24,000 journals, peer-reviewed journals that have been indexed, more than 9.87 million conference papers, more than 1.83 million books, and more than 44 million patents that are already indexed on the Scopus platform, which means as soon as researchers type one keyword, they get information from all these, not information, they get knowledge from all these four sections. Why? Because all this information is already peer reviewed. As I said earlier, Scopus is also a multidisciplinary content, and it covers journals from all major subject categories, including physical sciences, health sciences, social sciences, and life sciences. And you can see the number of journals on the left hand side for every subject category, right? Scopus data comes from more than 105 countries across the globe, which tells you that we have a global representation of data. And the data is not only focused to major countries like US, UK, Europe, or Australia. Don't you think there is a outstanding journal from Pakistan? There is an outstanding journal from Bangladesh or India or Russia, or there could be an extremely high impact author sitting in Siberia. Research can come, it is everywhere. So Scopus tries to ensure that we cover high quality data from all parts of the world, irrespective of the country, irrespective of the journal, irrespective of the language, right? So that is what Scopus aims at. I said all the data is peer reviewed. So the curated content is decided by a committee called Content Selection and Advisory Board, or CSAB committee. Now, it is the responsibility of this committee to ensure that the quality of data on Scopus is maintained year on year. Now, you all must know that no journal can remain stable on its quality, right? Even I showed you your institute's performance. You have been growing at 7% in terms of quality. So quality never stays stable. Sometimes quality can go up, sometimes quality can go down. So journals show these trends a lot. Sometimes one journal, which is an average journal today, next 2-3 years, it's a highly cited journal. And vice versa can also happen. A very good journal can quickly fall down on quality. So what Scopus does, every year we do an analysis of all the 24,000 journals twice every year, right? So one in September, October, and once in March, April. And as a result of which, some journals get removed and some journals get added to the Scopus platform. So that is again a question which a lot of you ask. I published in a journal, and when I published, I saw that the journal was indexed. Now, after 2 years, the journal is not there. So it is very much possible that the journal has fallen down on quality, or has, all is not qualified or fallen below the benchmark of Scopus standards, right? Another thing is, any journal that has been blacklisted or that has been identified or proven in court to follow any unethical practices in the past, Scopus is totally against indexing those journals. So that is again something which Scopus strongly believes in. So now the main question is, I've been telling a lot about Scopus. How can Scopus help researchers? That is our main aim today. Not the management, not the faculty, not the top management or Auric offices. They already know why Scopus is important to them. I want to talk about how it can benefit researchers. Okay, so first, Scopus helps you find out what exists in the global world of research output. How is that? I already told you. Number one, Scopus has data from more than 5,000 publishers. Scopus has more than 24,000 peer-reviewed journals. And Scopus has data from 1788 till 2023. So this tells you that we have the entire length and breadth of content within which you can search and find out whether a particular topic has already been researched on or is a new topic. So that will help you find whether your topic is new and trending or not. Next, get topic specific funding insights. So what is this and how is this important? A lot of times you look up to certain funding agencies for funding your project. Like if I talk about University of Agriculture Faisalabad, you have your own funds, you have HEC, right? And then you might have one or two or three or four other funding agencies that you focus on, right? But you need to know that there are so many funding agencies that we are absolutely not aware of, right? There can be smaller funding agencies that support one particular topic more than any big funding agency. So how do you know that? Because to find that out, Scopus is a good tool to find that out. How? Just type in a few keywords of your research, and Scopus can tell you which are the top funding agencies for that particular topic, not subject, topic. So if you are working in the field of agriculture, you can actually deep dive into your particular organism, your particular plant, your particular area of research, and find out which is the most best funding agency that has been sponsoring research in your area. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate everything, so I will show you how this works. Next, find out collaborators. This is something which is very important because collaboration is important. Why? Because research is more multidisciplinary nowadays. And you might be a subject expert in one or two or three subject areas, but you can't be an expert in all the subject areas. So for many other subjects, you need help, you need support, you need collaboration. And to find out collaborators, Scopus is a good tool that can help you find the top researchers across the globe in any subject category, right? So that even in your country, in your city, or globally, you can find them anywhere, right? The most important thing is finding the best possible collaborator for your research. Now, you might be sitting in a room and the person behind you might be the top researcher, but you don't know him, you have no idea about him, he doesn't fall in your circle, so you miss out on him. But if you are looking at Scopus, you have a bird's eye view of that entire topic, and you can easily pinpoint that this is the top author and I want to collaborate with this particular person, right? Next, tracking impact of research and monitoring global trends. So Scopus can tell you on the basis of number of articles published every year on a particular topic whether a topic is trending or not. So if you see the graph going up, it tells you the topic is trending. If you see the graph going down, it means that the topic was trending at one point, but now it is going down. So you get an idea before you even start researching or working whether your field is which field you are playing in, right? Whether it's a downwards going trend or an upwards going trend, right? Then helping researchers track their research performance through citation counts and H-index. Of course, when you publish, you want to know my article has got how many citations, what is my H-index, right? All these details are available on the Scopus platform. Now I'm going to talk more about H-index in my few next slides. Okay, so basically H-index means if I say H-index of an author is 20, it means at least 20 of his papers have received at least 20 citations. So this is one way of explaining H-index, but I will come to it later on. And the last and probably the most important, identify and analyze which journals to read and where to submit an article. Now, Scopus has a specialized feature where you can click on that feature and find out, related to your topic, which are the journals that will, first of all, find out the journals that are important for you and you can publish in, and then compare those journals on several factors to further narrow down and find out the best journal. So again, I will demonstrate that as well. Talking about finding the right journal and article type, one easy way of doing that is by going to the journal finder. Every publisher has a journal finder, And this is Elsevier's Journal Finder, which is called journalfinder.elsevier.com. Just go onto this website, enter your title, your abstract, keywords, and field of research, and the system can self generate a few journals which are more appropriate related to the content where you can publish in. Of course, this website will only refer you or suggest you Elsevier journals, right? So this is one way of finding out which are the most appropriate journals. The next way is from Scopus, which I will show you later on. Okay. So before we go on to the demo of Scopus, I would like to discuss a few things which are metrics, research metrics. So we talk about journal metrics, which we already know, impact factor, and there are many more, which I'm going to focus on. Then we have author metrics, where we talk about H index, and then we have article metrics. So where we talk about number of citations and FWCI. Okay. So first is impact factor. Now, how to calculate impact factor? There is a simple calculation which you can see on your screen. So if I want to calculate the impact factor of a journal in 2019, what I will do, in the denominator, I will take all articles published by that journal in the last 2 years, that is 17 and 18. And in the numerator, I will take all the citations received by that journal for those articles in 2017 and 18 in the current year. So that will give me, dividing this will give me a number which is called impact factor. Now, there is a lot of normalization that also happens behind, which is not available to public, right? But over the years, there have been a few issues that have been reported by researchers regarding impact factor. So number one, all journals do not have impact factor, right? Which is quite obvious. And I also believe that all journals should not have impact factor. But there are certain very good and upcoming journals that, only because they do not have an impact factor, they are sometimes neglected. And later on, those are the journals that come on top and in the next 3-4 years become the most cited journals. So the potential has to be identified earlier. That is the researcher's query. Next, conference proceedings are not considered for impact factor. Again, a very big disadvantage for research areas like computer science, where 80 to 90% of the research is published as conference papers. So how does a computer scientist understand which is the best proceeding for me? Which conferences should I participate in? Then impact factor is sometimes biased towards fast moving subject areas. So what is my logic behind this? There are a lot of journals in the field of medical sciences that have an impact factor of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, even 100. There is a journal in cancer which has a impact factor of, I think, 150 or so. So what is it that these subject areas, can you imagine the same for mathematics? I mean, I don't think that is possible at all, right? How many journals do you know in the field of mathematics that have impact factor of more than 10, 20, or 30 even? So that is why sometimes it is not fair to slow moving subject areas like mathematics, and an advantage for a fast moving subject area like medicine, where both the faculty and both the subjects are trying equally hard to publish. Then these are the reasons why impact factor was slowly being not considered as the only thing to consider while choosing a journal. And that is why there was need of alternative metrics. And these are the 3 alternative metrics that are very popular and are used by authors across the globe nowadays. Number 1 is CiteScore. CiteScore was developed by Elsevier in 2017. And CiteScore actually is more comprehensive, transparent, and free. So if you want to get impact factor, you need to have subscription to JCR reports, whereas CiteScore is available for free, even if you don't have access to Scopus. So right now you can go to the Scopus platform, click on sources, and you can see all the CiteScore of all the journals that are indexed on Scopus. Then source normalized impact per paper. So what does this mean? Source normalized impact per paper means subject area normalized. So right, the example that I gave you of a medicine and a mathematics journal, that issue can be resolved using SNIP, because this will normalize the subject area, and then tell you out of a medicine journal and a mathematics journal, which journal is better. Okay. Now, some of you might be thinking, why do I need to compare a medicine journal with a mathematics journal? It is illogical. The answer to this question is most of the journals today publish multidisciplinary content. So, take a very common example, Nature. Nature publishes anything and everything, life sciences, physics, chemistry, mathematics, any subject. How do you know that how good Nature is in the field of life sciences or how good it is in the field of mathematics? So that is where you need SNIP to granularly understand which journal is important in which subject category. Now, this may not be important for a university as such, but it is extremely important for a researcher because he needs to publish in the right journal, a journal that will value his content and not just give him a tag that, okay, you have published in a 10 impact factor journal, but your article has not got any citations. Do you think that is more useful? Or I have published in a lower impact factor journal, but I have got 10,000 citations. Which is more useful to you as a researcher? That you need to take a decision on, right? So publishing in a higher impact factor journal does not guarantee you citations, but publishing in a journal that readers will read your content and appreciate it is more important, right? Next is SJR. So SJR is SCImago journal ranking, which means SCImago journal ranking is a prestige ranking. So it tells you how prestigious a journal is. Now, what do you mean by prestige? So let's say there is one journal which gets lot of citations and publications from Yale, Harvard, Oxford, from your own universities in Pakistan that are doing really well, right? So those are top performing institutes worldwide. And there is another journal that is an average journal, not so many from all these institutes, right? So if you talk about prestige, this gives an automatic idea that a journal that is getting lot of publications, citations from top quality institutes will be of higher prestige. Why are they top quality institutes? Because they have the quality. They have the reputation of the last so many years of being of publishing highly cited content, right? So you have a trust on them. Let's say one paper gets lot of citations from a patent, or lot of articles from one journal have transferred into patents. That again improves the prestige of a journal. So these are a few things that are considered by SJR, and SCImago journal ranking not only ranks journals but also ranks institutes as well. So you can see SCImago journal ranking of institutes as well online. Let's come to the author level metrics on Scopus. So for this, I have taken the example respectfully of one of the top scientists in your institute, who is Mohammad Farooq from the University of Agriculture, Faisalabad, I think Department of Agronomy, if I'm not wrong. And what I could see was that his Scopus profile is on the left hand side and his Google Scholar profile is on the right hand side, right? Now, this is something that you will very commonly see on both the platforms. What difference I want to show you? H index on Scopus is 54. H index on Google Scholar is 74. Now, a lot of you have this question: why is the H index higher on Google Scholar? Which one should we consider? Which one is more authentic? Now, the answer is very simple to this. I'm not going to give you an answer. The answer is pretty simple. The answer is whichever you feel is more authentic, whichever you feel is trusted globally by major ranking funding agencies that are going to bring you your recognition. So it is about the evaluating agency who wants to evaluate you. So if your institute says, I want your Google Scholar profile, give your Google Scholar profile. But if the interviewer says, I need your Scopus profile, you should always provide your Scopus profile. And then 9 out of 10 times you will find out that people want your Scopus profile. So what is more important to you is something that you need to take a decision yourself, right? So you need to make sure that your Scopus profile is correct, up to date, because that is what globally people are going to see. They're not going to see Google Scholar. They're going to see Scopus. Ranking agencies like THE, QS, World Rankings, Shanghai Rankings, they all consider Scopus data exclusively, right? No other platform, only Scopus. So it's again a decision that you need to take whether you want to be identified globally or not, right? So why is this difference? So the difference is because Google Scholar not only covers journals, but academic websites, grey literature, preprints, and thesis. It also includes books from the Google Books project, which again is not a peer reviewed piece of information. And then it often contains duplicates of the same article, preprints and postprints. And this is one of the major reasons why you have a higher number of content number, publication number on Google Scholar and a higher citation number. And that is why you have higher H indexes. So this is something again that you need to be wary of, and you need to take special consideration into which one you want to focus on. Right now, another metric, I will not say metric, but a feature which is very important for researchers is the ORC ID or ORCID ID. This is not a metric, but this impacts your metric. Every researcher today in this room, I can see around 200, more than 200 participants. All of you ideally should have an ORC ID. And if you don't have an ORC ID till now, please go and create one. And the reason is ORC ID is actually a non-proprietary alphanumeric code and it is free. So anyone can go to the ORC ID website and create an ORC ID for yourself. How will this help you? So let me take an example of sir here, Mr. Mohammad Umar Farooq, right? So his name is Mohammad Umar Farooq. In journals, it is going to be written as Farooq Mohammad Umar. It can be written as M.U. Farooq, M. Farooq, Farooq Mohammad. So his name can have so many permutations and combinations. And it is not he who decides how his name will be written. It is decided by the journal, right? So when there are so many name types, how will the journal know that this is the same person, right? And I don't know. I mean, even after marriage for women, after marriage, if you choose to change your surname or any name change, how does Scopus know that this is exactly the same person? That can be done if you have an ORC ID. Simply publish your paper, put in your ORC ID, and the system can automatically recognize that this is the same person, right? So please create an ORC ID, and next time when you publish, please mention your ORC ID in your journals. Next and the last thing is article level metrics. Now, when you talk about article level metrics, what does it mean? So when I want to choose articles to cite, right, how do I choose? So I have two very similar articles and I have the decision to make. Should I cite this article or should I cite this article? And how do I choose that? So probably I will look at author name, I will look at number of citations. But an easier way to do that is to go to Scopus and find out what is the FWCI of that article. I already told you FWCI means field weighted citation impact. It can be used for an institute as well as for an research article. What does it tell you? It tells you how impactful that article is. So 1 is the global world average. Anything above 1 is better than world average. Anything below 1 is below world average. So when you compare these two journals, these two articles, you will find one has a higher FWCI than the other. And my recommendation is whenever you have such a situation where you need to choose between two articles, always cite the article with the higher FWCI because it tags your paper to that paper. Once your paper is tagged there, you have more visibility and your paper or your article has more chances of getting cited. So these are few tips and tricks that you can use when you are choosing articles to cite. And then Plumex Metrics is again a unique feature on the Science Direct platform, which talks about the social media impact of a research article. We all know that LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, all this play a very important role nowadays in terms of distributing this content worldwide, right? And thereby, Plumex Metrics keeps a track of how many likes, shares you have, how many tweets you have, how many Wikipedia references you have, or any newspaper or blog mentions. Everything is covered under Plumex Metrics. So you get an overview of the entire document. What is the quality? What is the impact? and what is the social media impact of this particular paper. So now let's do a quick demo of Scopus and try to show you how this particular platform works. Now to access Scopus, first of all, it's an IP-based platform. So any institute needs to have access to Scopus, and the users must have the access to the IP where Scopus is registered. Only then they can access the platform. Currently, if you are working from home and your institute has already subscribed to Scopus, you should ask for remote access to work from home. And a very simple way is www.scopus.com. So this is the interface that you will see when you log on to the Scopus platform, right? And this is when you have access. So you see three different types of searches. One is an affiliation search, where I can simply go and type the name of any institute, even the city's name, and I will just do a quick search, and the system can actually tell me which are the institutes. So see, I have University of Agriculture Faisalabad right here. I can click on your institute's name, and it can take me to your institute's profile, where I can see in total you have 11,000, more than 11,000 documents contributed by more than 4,000 publishers. And these are the subject areas that you focus on. How many topics that you publish in, how many papers, the collaborating institutes, and the journals where you have published the most, right? And there is 1546 patent results also that are available. So all this information is available at a click of a button on the Scopus platform. So let me go back, and then there is a author search option. So here I just need to type the name of the last name and first name of the author and the institute name, or else if I only have the ORC ID, that also works, and I do a search, it can take me to the author profile of that particular author. What I am more interested to show you is the document search. Now here, what you can do, you can use a set of keywords and then do a comprehensive search. So let's say I am interested to talk about soil moisture, right? And then when you write soil moisture, always used inverted commas, because then it makes sure that the article, the words come together, right? So whenever you are using anything which is more than one word, use inverted commas. So soil moisture, and then I need to tell the system what this is. So this is a keyword, so I can keep here article title abstract keyword, right? And then there is a plus sign here. So I can keep on adding this plus sign, and I can use and, or, and not, right? So let's say I use and I write Pakistan, and then I tell the system that this is a country's name. So affiliation country. So whatever you write on the left hand side, you mention it here, right? And then you can keep on adding this plus sign. It is always recommended that use more around 3 to 5 keywords, but not more than that. Otherwise, it brings you to very small number of documents. If that is your purpose, then you go through more number of documents. So let's say now I click on search, and let me see. So I get 435 documents that have the keyword soil moisture and are published with a Pakistan affiliation. Okay, so now I want to, so there are 435 documents. Now my question is, if I give all these 435 documents in PDF to you, will it make any difference? Will you be able to gather all the information? Will you be able to read everything and still digest everything? An easier way to do this is to do a simple quick analysis of these documents on this page. So first of all, what you can see here is that this has been sorted on the basis of newest. So that means the latest article is on top, right? If I want to get the highest cited article on top, I simply need to sort it on this basis, and this will put the highest cited document on top, right? Then on the left hand side, you find that there are so many filters. So there are different types of open access that are here, the year of publication, the name of the authors. So M. Farooq is right here. Then you have subject areas. So if you are very specific about a particular subject area like agriculture and biological sciences, you can simply click here and make that. And then there are other filters as well. So you can use all these filters and then narrow down to your particular set of research articles. Now let's say I want to do an analysis. All I need to do is click here, this button right here, analyze search results. Now let's see what happens. The entire content get transformed into graphs. Now these graphs will give you really quick insights about a particular topic. So what do I see here? That till 2020, 68 documents were published in 2020, and year-wise, how many documents have been published? So if I look at this, there are documents that are published in 1987, 86, but the major boost came here in 2014. 2016 to 2017, when we see a sharp increase in the number of documents. And if you look at 2020, currently this topic is on the rise, which means it's a trending topic. The trends are going up. Don't look at this. This is going down because this is 2021. We haven't even started. So these are 5 documents that are articles in press, right? So don't consider this. We consider only the 2020. So we are still going up. Next, if researchers want to know which journals publish most content on soil moisture, Pakistan Journal of Botany. So this is the most preferred journal by researchers in Pakistan because I took Pakistan as a country. Now, if you don't take Pakistan as a country, it will give you the global aspect. So you can get both type of aspect, global as well as local, and then you can compare. So researchers in Pakistan favor this journal, Pakistan Journal of Botany, Agriculture Water Management, Pakistan Journal of Agricultural Sciences, and so on, right? So this gives you an idea of which journals you can compare and find out whether to publish in those journals or not. Then moving on, who are the top authors? So I already see that M. Farooq is the top author, followed by A. Banu, A. Ahmed, A. Khan. And if I want to see who these people are, I can simply click on their profiles, okay, and find out Muhammad Farooq. This is his name. He's from your university only. So he's Muhammad Farooq, the same person who I showed the profile for, University of Agriculture, Faisalabad. And then you see his total number of documents is 384. His H index is 54, which is outstanding. And then all his documents are listed here. And all the references that he has used are also mentioned here. So all this gives you a good idea of what kind of research this particular person has been doing. And if you are trying to find out anyone to collaborate with in the field of soil moisture, then Muhammad Farooq is one of the top contenders that you can find out, right? Next is by affiliation. Now so in Pakistan, the most number of documents is published by your own university, which is University of Agriculture, Faisalabad, about 113 documents. And followed by Arid Agricultural University, Rawalpindi, and Nuclear Institute of Agriculture and Biology, Pakistan, and so on. So you also find out who are the other good universities that are publishing on soil moisture. Then who does Pakistan collaborate with the most? So I can remove Pakistan because all these documents are already from Pakistan. And what we see is that China is the most preferred collaborator when it comes to soil moisture, followed by US, Australia, Canada. So this is for this particular topic. Maybe in a different topic, China may be at number 2 and US may be at number 1. So these trends also give you an idea of who you are collaborating with in which field, right? Then documents by type. So 87%, more than 87% are original research articles, 6% are conference papers, and 3% are book chapters. Now this may look a little unimportant, but it is very important. Why? Because if you look at a subject area of computer sciences, you will find 80 to 90% of articles being published as conference proceedings, in conference proceedings. So that also needs to be taken care of, right? So any young researcher, early career researcher can easily understand which topic area he is venturing into and what he needs to focus on to publish where. Then comes subject area. So of course, this is a topic of agriculture and biological sciences, but also for environmental sciences, earth and planetary sciences, engineering, etc. So see, all these are multidisciplinary subject area. Now, if you are a person of computer sciences and you are still working on soil moisture in some or other way, you can click on these 19 documents because these are focused on soil moisture in the field of computer science. So this way you can deep dive into your subject area as well. And then last but definitely not the least is by funding sponsor. So I already told you who you need to target when it comes to funding opportunities in the field of soil moisture. So the answer is right here. It's National Natural Science Foundation of China, followed by Alabama Commission on Higher Education, followed by Higher Education Commission of Pakistan. So actually, Higher Education Commission of Pakistan is number two. This has been divided into two because of the spelling. So this is again important. See, this is MISION and this is MISSION. This is because the spelling that has been submitted to the journals and they have only indexed those, right? So this creates this difference, and you have 25 documents that are sponsored by Higher Education Commission. But then there are other programs as well. So now you know that if it comes to soil moisture, National Natural Science Foundation of China should be your go-to funding agency, right? So all these insights can also be, you can get from the Scopus platform. Now let me go quickly to the Scopus platform, the main page here. And can you see this small icon here which says compare sources? Now this is really important because this is going to help you compare journals across different subject areas as well. So let's say I pick a particular title, right? So let's say I just write a keyword which is agriculture. If you have very specific journals, you can actually use those journals as well. So let's say I pick randomly this journal, this journal. I'll pick three journals. So this journal. So I've picked three journals now. Okay. And now I want to compare these three journals right here. So the best part is on this particular page, you can compare up to 10 journals at a time. I'm comparing three. So my first question is site score. So on the scale of site score, which we have already learned what site score is, which journal is doing the best? So it is Agriculture, Ecosystems and Environment. And you see this journal was trailing behind this journal till 2017. And from 2017, this journal has grown and this journal has fallen down. Exactly what I was telling you earlier. Any journal can improve on quality, any journal can go down on quality, right? So out of these three, this journal is doing the best when it comes to site score. Now let's go to SJR. If you can recall, what does SJR tell you? SJR tells you prestige, how prestigious a journal is. So this journal, still the blue one, although it is lower on impact factor or site score, it still has a higher reputation, right? So it still has lot of preferences from highly cited institutes worldwide. So this is what insights you get. And then SNIP. So if I normalize the subject areas, now all these three journals are from the same field. I have chosen agriculture, so you don't find a lot of difference. But if you choose any different journal here, you will see a lot of difference when it comes to SNIP because then you normalize the subject area, right? Then there are other factors as well that you can look into, but this factor can be really a deal breaker or a deal maker. So let's say you have finalized these three journals that you will publish in. Absolutely. Now you need to take a decision. Which journal should I publish in? So simple analysis. Any journal that publishes more number of documents gives me more probability of getting published, right? Now, since I have already taken care of all the parameters earlier and I have finalized that if I get a publication in either of the three, I am happy. My definitely first choice will be to go for a journal that publishes more number of documents in a year. Now, the blue journal publishes 381 documents, published 58 documents in 2020. The red one published 323. whereas the green one only published 14. So where do you think is more probability of getting published once you have finalized based on all the criterias that these are the three journals? Again, a good tool to help you take decisions on which journals to publish in. And the last thing that I want to show you on Scopus is this tab here, which says sources. So if you click here, this will take you to the journal list that was indexed on Scopus or that is currently indexed on Scopus. So you can see the site score values are already available, right? And for different years, you can see the site score value as well. And on the left hand side, you can see all these categories which you can filter by. You can search by subject area or title or publisher or ISSN. So let's say subject area, and I click here and say agriculture and biological sciences. Within agriculture, biological sciences, there are so many categories. So let's say agronomy and crop science. So I just say okay, and then the system can tell you these are the 440 journals on Scopus that have been publishing articles in this field, right? So this gives you an idea of the top journals across the globe. However, my recommendation is whenever you are on this page, click here, download the Scopus source list in an Excel form, save it on your system, and there is a tab within this, there is a filter which says active and inactive. So you need to be very careful that if you are looking to get a publication in a Scopus index journal, always publish in a journal that is currently indexed. There may be some journals that were previously indexed, right? Don't fall into that. Please make sure you are using the right category of journal selection. So what I want to tell you now is that having said all this, I think promoting your paper is something which is extremely important, because you need to promote your research as well. You need to make sure that you are publishing in the right journal and then promoting your research as well. How can you promote your research or market your research? Using tools like Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google Scholar, Academia, ResearchGate, Mendeley. All these are social networking platforms, and you can easily promote your own work by pasting links of your articles on these websites, where more and more people can get to see your research article. How will you get citations? If more and more people read your article, there is more probability of you getting cited. So make sure you do everything to ensure that the probability always goes up, right? And then this is something which is very important for all of you. We are all working from home, and we have very limited opportunities to grow and improve on our knowledge skills. So to help you save time and achieve your objectives while you work from home, Elsevier has launched the Elsevier Researcher Academy, which is a free e-learning platform where researchers can go, take up designated courses, and get certificates after completion. So if you are interested to upgrade your research skills and get certified, you can go to this free platform, register for these courses, and then complete them at your own time, and then finally get certificates for your achievement. So do visit this website. It is called Elsevier Researcher Academy and can be accessed by this particular link that you see here. So with this, I would like to thank everyone for your patience. We welcome feedback and suggestions from the researchers on how we can further support you during this particular challenging time. Elsevier remains committed to working together with the research community of Pakistan, with HEC Pakistan, as well as individual institutes, to improve the value we deliver to researchers, research leaders, librarians, funders, and healthcare professionals. Remarkable progress has been made thanks to the dedicated researchers and health professionals across the globe. At Elsevier, we feel privileged to serve this community by combining advanced technology with reliable information to deliver insights. We create tools that put users into control, helping them work faster, manage complexity, and free up time to focus on your goals and improve outcomes. Elsevier leads over other publishers in terms of relative impact and share in top cited articles globally. Elsevier is one of the most preferred publishers across the globe for research when it comes to quality. Therefore, having said this, I would like to thank you for your patience, and for any further inquiries or queries, you may please contact our local partners in Pakistan who are ANJ DevTech consultants, and the details are on your screen.